Right now, as of today, Manchester United are standing at a crossroads. The season is not yet officially over, but the decisions being made behind the scenes this week will shape everything that follows. Michael Carrick is on the verge of being confirmed as the permanent manager. The goalkeeper situation has been completely reset, and the midfield recruitment plan is becoming clearer by the hour. This is not a quiet day at Old Trafford. This is the beginning of something. Let us start with the most important story first. Michael Carrick, the manager situation. The situation with Michael Carrick is now reaching its conclusion, and every piece of information points in the same direction. Fabrizio Romano, one of the most reliable names in transfer journalism, has confirmed that Manchester United and Carrick are set to continue together next season and beyond. Romano specifically noted that chances of this happening have been increasing for weeks and that players, management and everyone inside the club feels he should stay. Talks are now in their final stages and a new deal is expected to be confirmed. Now let me give you my take on that. When you have a situation where the players are aligned, the management is aligned and the club hierarchy is aligned, that is not a rumour anymore. That is a formality waiting to happen. The fact that Romano himself is reporting this gives it the highest level of credibility you can get at this stage before a formal announcement. David Ornstein from The Athletic added important context to this. He noted that the general feeling across football is that it would have been really harsh not to give Carrick the job permanently, given his achievements. Ornstein was also clear that there is no final concrete clarity just yet, but the direction of travel is unmistakable. My analysis here is straightforward. The language being used across multiple credible sources is not the language of uncertainty. It is the language of a decision already made internally, waiting for the paperwork and the announcement. Carrick staying is, at this point, the working assumption for everyone inside Old Trafford. Now, there is an interesting timing element here. The Athletic's Laurie Whitwell raised a point that deserves attention. Sunday's final home game of the season sees Nottingham Forest visit Old Trafford. The suggestion is that ideally, Carrick's future would be confirmed before that game. Why? Because, as is customary for managers at the end of campaigns, Carrick could address the crowd after the final home fixture. If his future is confirmed, he can speak openly about his ambitions for next season. That creates momentum, energy, and a sense of direction heading into the summer. Whitwell also pointed to a very fair historical parallel. When Manchester United announced major signings like Rafael Varane and Casemiro in front of the crowd in recent years, it created a boost of energy that carried through the pre-season period. Confirming Carrick before Sunday could do something similar. Waiting until after everyone has left for holidays or World Cup preparation could create uncertainty and undermine his authority. That is a lesson this club learned the hard way when uncertainty surrounded Erik ten Hag after the FA Cup win in 2024. The bottom line is this. Manchester United need to move quickly, the new contract talks need to be resolved, the backroom team structure needs to be finalised, and Sunday represents the perfect moment to make a statement to the fan base. Whether that happens in time remains to be seen, but the will is clearly there from all sides. If you are finding this analysis valuable, hit that subscribe button right now. On this channel, we break down every major Manchester United story with depth and precision. No sensationalism, no clickbait, just real analysis. Subscribe and join the conversation. The goalkeeper situation, a complete reset. Now let's move to the goalkeeper position because the news here is significant and deserves to be understood clearly. Andre Onana is not in Manchester United's plans for next season. That has now been confirmed. The 30-year-old Cameroonian was hopeful of returning to the club to compete with the current #1 Seny Lamens, but the club has made its decision. Onana has no future at Old Trafford. That is a clean break. My analysis on this is important. This is not a minor squad decision. This is the club making a definitive statement about its goalkeeping hierarchy. Seny Lamens is clearly being backed as the #1. By removing Onana from the picture entirely, United are committed to that path. The club is also reportedly open to signing a goalkeeper this summer, which tells you they want competition for Lamens rather than someone to challenge him for the starting spot. Now, there is also a historical footnote worth noting here. During the January transfer window, Manchester United showed strong interest in Emiliano Martinez of Aston Villa. The club explored a move late in January as they looked to strengthen the goalkeeping department. However, negotiations broke down after Aston Villa demanded a fee higher than United were willing to pay, and the deal collapsed in the final days of the window. My take on the Martinez situation is this. It shows that the goalkeeping concern at United was real and recognised by the club's decision makers. They acted on it in January, but were blocked by Villa's valuation. That conversation may or may not resurface this summer, but the fact that United explored that move tells you that goalkeeping is an area they have been actively thinking about for several months now. Whatever goalkeeper they bring in this summer, it will likely be at a price point that makes sense rather than at any cost. Two names in the frame. Moving to defence, and there are two stories here that are worth breaking down carefully. First, Waldemar Anton from Borussia Dortmund. Manchester United are expected to pursue a move for the German centre-back this summer. Anton has emerged as a player of genuine interest at Old Trafford, with the club continuing to assess their defensive options. Borussia Dortmund are expected to try and keep him by securing a new contract, but with only 2 years remaining on his current deal, United believe there could be an opportunity. The potential transfer fee is believed to be somewhere between €35 million and €40 million. My analysis here is positive. If United can secure a centre-back of Bundesliga quality for that fee, it represents genuine value in the current market. The fact that his contract situation creates some leverage for the buying club is a real advantage. This is exactly the kind of smart, cost-effective defensive business that a club in United's financial position should be targeting. The second defensive name is Marco Palestra, the right-back at Atalanta. Manchester United are monitoring him, and they are not alone. Arsenal and Chelsea are also interested in the Italian defender. Atalanta value him at somewhere between €40 million and €50 million. There is one complicating factor here. Atalanta are reportedly reluctant to sell to Serie A rivals, which means they may actually prefer to sell to a Premier League club. That could work in United's favour. My analysis on Palestra is measured. This is still at the monitoring stage. No serious negotiations have been reported. United are assessing, along with two other major clubs. The competition from Arsenal and Chelsea means United would need to move decisively if they want him. But the price point, at up to €50 million for a quality right-back, is reasonable for the level of player being discussed. The midfield rebuild, the most important story of the summer. Now we get to the heart of everything happening at Manchester United this summer. The midfield. This is the most complex, most expensive, and most consequential area of recruitment the club faces. Let me walk you through exactly what we know and what it means. The primary objective is clear. Replacing Casemiro is the #1 priority. Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic confirmed this directly. The plan is to bring in two midfielders, with a possible third depending on cost or whether a young player from the academy can be promoted to fill the gap. Manuel Ugarte is also expected to be sold, which means the midfield is effectively being rebuilt around Kobbie Mainoo as the foundation. Now, let me be honest with you about the complexity here. This is not a simple one or two player job. The club needs to find the right balance of profiles, price points, and fits. It is not about signing the biggest names. It is about finding the right combination that works alongside Mainoo. Let me go through each target individually. Elliot Anderson, Nottingham Forest. The situation with Elliot Anderson is the one that everything else depends on. He is the #1 midfield target at this point, and the sense is that whether United can sign him will dictate the entire approach to the rest of the window. Nottingham Forest are expected to demand a fee that could approach £100 million. At 23 years old, Anderson has already accumulated over 117 Premier League appearances. He is physical, he can drive play forward, and he is seen as the ideal partner for Kobbie Mainoo's more graceful style of play. The comparison being drawn is that Anderson could be United's version of Declan Rice. However, there is a serious complication. Manchester City are also strongly interested in Anderson. The concern is that City may simply be willing to offer higher wages, which could make it very difficult for United to compete. My analysis: £100 million is a significant commitment for any club, but if Anderson is genuinely the player who can transform this midfield for the next decade, the fee may be justified. The risk is not overpaying. The risk is losing him to City and then having to spend a similar amount on a less suitable alternative. United need to be bold here. If Anderson is truly their man, Adam Wharton, Crystal Palace. Wharton is another name in a similar price range, potentially reaching £80 to £100 million. However, the momentum behind this link has gone quiet recently. There are genuine doubts about whether he would fit alongside Kobbie Mainoo. The concern is that you do not want to spend that level of fee on a player who essentially plays the same role as the midfielder you already have. At that price, you want certainty, not a gamble. My analysis: until the momentum picks back up, Wharton feels like a lower priority than several others on this list. Aurelien Tchouameni, Real Madrid. This is a fascinating option. Tchouameni is a player with over 40 Champions League appearances and nearly 200 games for Real Madrid. He has already proven he can handle the highest level of pressure. He replaced Casemiro at Real Madrid, so the question being asked is a legitimate one. Why could he not replace Casemiro at Manchester United? The obvious concern is his lack of Premier League experience, but the counter-argument is equally valid. This is a player of immense quality who has performed consistently at the highest level in European football. Now, there is a piece of information that adds a very interesting layer to this story. Transfer News Live reported that Manchester United are considering a move for Federico Valverde, also of Real Madrid, following a reported training ground altercation between Valverde and Tchouameni. The source for this is the Daily Star, and I want to be completely transparent with you about that. The Daily Star is not in the same category of reliability as Fabrizio Romano or The Athletic. Treat this as a rumour only. The story suggests United believe internal tensions at the Bernabeu could create an opening, but there is no serious concrete reporting behind this yet. It is worth monitoring, but not worth treating as likely. My analysis on Tchouameni specifically. If United can bring him in, he brings genuine Champions League pedigree and a proven ability to fill exactly the role Casemiro occupied. United would likely pair him with a player who has Premier League experience to help him adapt. Do not overthink this one if the price is right. Morten Hjulmand, Sporting CP. This is a name that deserves more attention than it is getting. Manchester United are interested in the Danish midfielder. He is not currently the club's top midfield target, but he is a player genuinely admired internally at Old Trafford. Here is the important detail on the fee. Sporting CP have an €80 million release clause, but they are understood to be open to negotiations. Talks could potentially start at around €60 million. The belief is that a deal below the release clause is possible if the right offer arrives this summer. My analysis. Hjulmand represents a credible, experienced option who could add real defensive solidity to the midfield. If United can secure him below his release clause, that is a smart piece of business. He may not be the headline name, but he could be a very important addition. Carlos Baleba, Brighton. United genuinely admire Baleba. That much is clear. The interest has persisted despite what has been described as a very disappointing season for the midfielder. To his credit, he has improved in recent weeks, and there is still a lot to like about his profile. But there is an important condition attached to any move for Baleba. He cannot be the #1 signing. He needs to be a supporting player in a midfield group, not the centrepiece. The complication is that Brighton are notoriously tough negotiators. Getting him at the right price will not be easy. The ideal scenario painted here is clear. If United could pair Baleba alongside Tchouameni and Mbeumo, that would be a very strong midfield combination. But sequencing matters. Get the primary signing right first, then go for Baleba. Matheus Fernandes. West Ham United. West Ham's relegation has changed everything for Fernandes. The 21-year-old Brazilian is now expected to be available, and a deal is believed to be possible for around £60 million. That represents genuine value for a player of his age and potential. The honest assessment here is also clear. If Fernandes were the headline signing, it would feel underwhelming. Not because he is a bad player, but because he is still a long way from his ceiling. He works best as a complementary signing alongside someone of higher immediate impact. Pair him with Elliot Anderson or Tchouameni, and you have something very exciting. As a standalone statement signing, it falls short. Ederson, Atalanta, here is an interesting market opportunity. Ederson's contract at Atalanta expires in 2027, which means he could potentially be available for around £40 million. That is a low fee for a midfielder of his quality. However, there is an immediate and unavoidable concern. Manchester United's recent record signing players from Serie A is poor. Rasmus Hjulmand, Joshua Zirkzee and Andre Onana have all struggled significantly after arriving from Italian football. That does not mean Ederson would fail, but it is a pattern the club cannot ignore. The evidence suggests this one requires careful thought before committing. Alex Scott, Bournemouth. Alex Scott is described as one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. He is a midfield dynamo who likes to break forward and contribute goals. His contract runs until 2028, which limits how much Bournemouth can realistically demand. He recently scored a match-winning goal against Arsenal at the Emirates, which speaks clearly to his ability to deliver in big moments. My analysis: Scott, as the third piece of a midfield puzzle, alongside Anderson and Fernandes, would give United real energy, goals from midfield, and excellent long-term value. He is not the loudest name on this list, but he could be one of the smartest additions. Sandro Tonali, Newcastle United. Tonali is desperate to leave Newcastle and play Champions League football. That desire is genuine and creates a real opportunity. However, Newcastle's valuation of him is extremely high, with some figures reported being in the range of £100 million or beyond. The realistic assessment is this: a deal in the £65 to £75 million range would be considered fair value. Anything beyond that would represent an overpay. Given Newcastle's reluctance to sell and their high asking price, this one feels difficult unless United are willing to go significantly above what makes financial sense. Bruno Guimaraes, Newcastle United. Guimaraes is said to be Casemiro's personal choice of successor. If he were attainable, he would represent an instant proven solution, but the reality is stark. Newcastle will almost certainly block any move for their captain. At 28 years old, there is limited long-term value in the investment, and Newcastle's asking price would be astronomical. This one is extremely unlikely to happen. João Gomes, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Gomes ticks several important boxes. Premier League experience. Young, combative, and potentially available at a low fee following Wolverhampton's relegation. He missed out on Brazil's World Cup squad, which means he would be immediately available for pre-season preparation. However, there is a real urgency concern. Atletico Madrid are pushing hard for his signature. United risk missing out entirely if they delay. That said, if United are focused on higher priority targets, missing Gomes would simply mean their attention was placed elsewhere. James Garner. The wildcard return. One more name in the midfield conversation. Manchester United are considering a potential return for James Garner, the former academy graduate. He is being looked at as a possible option for squad depth at a lower cost. He falls into the affordable and low-risk bracket of United's recruitment strategy. This is not a headline move. It is sensible depth planning. Amad Diallo. The form crisis. Away from transfers, there is a very important football story developing inside the squad itself. Amad Diallo is going through a genuinely difficult period. The former Atalanta winger has not scored for Manchester United since last December. In the 4-4 draw against Bournemouth at Old Trafford, he was in the starting lineup for United's last match against Sunderland, but struggled to make any meaningful impact and was substituted in the second half. His goal-scoring and assist drought in the Premier League continues in 2026. What makes this story particularly layered is the contrast with what was being said about him not long ago. Former manager Ruben Amorim spoke glowingly about Amad after the draw against Nottingham Forest in 2025. Amorim described him as having a lot of talent, growing up really fast, and being capable of becoming so much better. Amorim also highlighted the areas needing improvement, including consistency in build-up play and quality in the final third. My analysis: those words from Amorim now feel like a measuring stick. Sunday's final home game against Nottingham Forest gives Amad a perfect opportunity to remind everyone of his quality. If he starts and performs, it validates everything Amorim said. If he is not in the starting 11 under Michael Carrick, it only underlines that his development is still not where it needs to be. This is a pivotal moment for the young winger. The talent is undeniable. The consistency has been the problem. Sunday is his chance to make a statement. Bryan Mbeumo, the positive voice. On a more positive note, Bryan Mbeumo has spoken about his season at Manchester United. His assessment was balanced and honest. He acknowledged there have been good moments and areas to improve. He described having a good start to the season and expressed his consistent desire to come back better every year throughout his career. What stood out in his comments was the collective pride he expressed. He described it as a top season overall for the group and expressed full confidence that with hard work, the individual and collective performance can only improve. My analysis: that is exactly the mentality you want from a player heading into a crucial summer. No excuses, no deflection, just a calm professional acknowledgement of where things stand and a clear belief in what comes next. And Mbeumo's attitude here is a good sign for how the squad is approaching the rebuild. Final thoughts. So what does all of this tell us about Manchester United right now? The club is in motion. Michael Carrick is almost certainly staying. The goalkeeping situation has been decisively reset with Onana out and a potential new addition being considered. The defensive recruitment is progressing with real targets at sensible price points. And the midfield rebuild, centered on replacing Casemiro and building around Kobbie Mainoo, is the defining challenge of this summer. Everything hinges on the first midfield signing. If Elliot Anderson is secured, the rest of the puzzle becomes significantly easier. If City win that race, United will need to adapt their strategy and ensure whoever comes in instead is truly the right fit alongside Menu. The evidence is clear. This is a club that knows what it needs to do. The question is whether it can execute quickly enough and smartly enough to make this summer a genuine turning point. That is the full picture as it stands today. Thank you for watching Adam United Analyst. If this kind of detailed, honest breakdown is what you want from your Manchester United coverage, subscribe to the channel right now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. We will be back with more analysis as this summer develops. See you in the next one.